I shouldn't have knocked. I knew it even as my knuckles tapped the wood. Light, hesitant, like I was asking the door to forgive me for disturbing it. The hallway outside her apartment smelled faintly of rain-soaked concrete, though the storm had ended hours ago. I almost left twice before she opened the door, barefoot, her hair still damp from a shower, sleeves of a worn sweater pushed up past her elbows. Elena. She looked at me the way people look at a question they don't want to answer. And still, she didn't shut the door. "Your trouble," she said quietly, leaning her shoulder against the frame. I smiled, though my mouth felt dry. "Then why do you want me here?" The corner of her lip tugged upward, just for a second, before she pulled it back, tightening. She stepped aside, and I entered, the air in her place thick with the smell of coffee left on the burner too long. It was quiet inside. Too quiet. Like the silence had been living here longer than I had. I dropped my jacket on the chair, but didn't sit. She hovered near the window, pretending to straighten the curtain that didn't need straightening. Her movements were neat, restrained, like she was afraid of taking up too much space, even in her own home. "You shouldn't come here like this," she said, not looking at me. "Like what?" She shrugged, one shoulder rising and falling, still tugging at that useless curtain. "Like you don't know what you're doing." Her words cut, not sharp but careful, almost tender. And maybe that was worse. Because she was right, I didn't know. I only knew that I couldn't stop thinking about her voice, the way it carried something unsaid between syllables. I only knew that walking away from her last time had left a taste in my mouth I couldn't wash out. I moved closer, slow enough that she had space to stop me. She didn't. Her sweater sleeve brushed my hand when she finally turned. A small thing, barely a touch. But it was enough to send a crack through the quiet. "Elena," I said, her name softer than I meant it. Her eyes flicked up, briefly, unwillingly, then back down. "You don't know what you're asking for." "Maybe not," I admitted. "But neither do you." The air seemed to hold its breath then. Her fingers tightened on the curtain fabric, knuckles pale. Mine hovered near hers, the way you hold your hand above a flame, testing the heat. For a second, I thought she might let it burn. The clock on the kitchen wall ticked too loud. The coffee pot clicked as it shut itself off. She exhaled slowly, as if the weight of keeping me out was heavier than letting me in. "I shouldn't," she began, but her voice caught, unfinished. I wanted to answer, to promise something reckless or tender, I don't know which. But before I could, her phone buzzed against the counter. Once, then again, then again. She froze. Didn't move to pick it up. Didn't even blink. Just stared at the counter like the sound itself was a betrayal. And I stood there, still too close, my chest tight with words I hadn't said, as the phone buzzed again. The phone stopped buzzing, finally. Elena's shoulders dropped, but only slightly. She picked up the mug on the counter and set it down again without drinking. "Someone important?" I asked, my voice quieter than I meant. Her eyes flicked to me, sharp and tired at once. Everyone thinks they're important when they call. That should have ended it. A closed door of a sentence. But I couldn't help myself. "Who was it?" "You're young," she said instead, almost with a laugh that wasn't a laugh. "You think answers come cheap. They don't." Her words landed harder than she knew. Young. I hated how it sounded in her mouth, like an accusation, like I hadn't earned the right to stand here. Still, I stayed. I thought of my father, the way he had looked at me when I dropped out of grad school last year, like I was wasting time I hadn't even started using. Maybe that's why I came to Elena in the first place. She didn't look at me like a mistake. Not usually. She pressed her palms against the counter, her back to me now. The sweater slipped just enough to reveal the slope of her shoulder, a faint scar near her collarbone. A detail I wasn't supposed to notice, but couldn't unsee. "My marriage," she said finally, low and flat, as if she'd decided something. "It ended 4 years ago." He was practical, steady. The kind of man who never forgets to pay the electric bill, but also never asked me if I was happy. She paused, and I didn't breathe. "I don't do this," she added quickly, shaking her head. "I don't invite anyone in. I don't want the mess." "You think I'm mess?" I asked, half teasing, half desperate. Her silence was the answer. And yet she didn't tell me to leave. Maybe she was right. Maybe I didn't know what I was doing. I was 26, restless, my mother still leaving worried voicemails because she didn't understand what phase I was in. But standing here, I knew this much. The pull between us wasn't some phase. It was heavier than that, sharper. "Why me then?" I asked finally. Her hand stilled on the counter. The clock ticked again, obnoxiously loud. You remind me, she said slowly, of a version of myself I don't get to be anymore. Her honesty knocked the air out of me. I stepped closer, reckless again. She turned, and for the first time since I'd arrived, her eyes stayed on mine. Too long. Not enough. Something in my chest lurched. The space between us shrank without meaning to. My hand brushed hers when I reached for the abandoned mug. Barely a graze. A mistake anyone could excuse. But neither of us moved away. Her fingers stayed there, warm, trembling, pressed against mine for half a second too long. Half a second that told me I wasn't imagining any of this. Her fingers lingered on mine, but then the phone lit up again. Same name flashing. Same insistence. This time, she yanked her hand back as if burned. You should go, she said, her voice sharper now. Elena, please. She rubbed her temple, avoiding me. This isn't, you don't understand. Maybe I didn't. But I knew enough to catch the hesitation in her voice, the tremor. She wanted me here. That was the truth she wouldn't let herself say. I didn't move toward the door. I couldn't. And then, the knock. 3 firm raps against the wood. Elena froze. My chest tightened. She closed her eyes, drew in a breath like it hurt, then whispered, "Don't say a word." I nodded. She crossed the room with deliberate calm, but her hand shook when she reached for the knob. The door opened. A man's voice, low, familiar in the way a shadow feels familiar. You didn't answer my calls. Her ex. It had to be. I was busy, she said evenly. With who? She didn't answer. Not right away. Her body leaned into the doorframe, blocking his view inside. But from where I stood, pressed against the kitchen counter, I could see the tension in her jaw, the way her nails dug into the wood. You can't just drop in, she continued, voice clipped. He sighed, tired and entitled. Elena, I still have a key. Not anymore. Their silence stretched. My pulse hammered. Finally, his footsteps retreated. A pause, then the elevator doors groaned shut. The moment he was gone, Elena closed the door and leaned against it, exhaling like she'd been holding her breath for years. Her eyes found me, wide, unguarded. I stepped forward before I thought better of it. You don't have to. Don't. She cut me off, her voice cracking. The air between us snapped tight again, more electric now, the danger of almost being caught pulsing in both of us. Elena, I said softly, taking another step. Her lips parted, like she wanted to answer, but no words came. Just that silence, heavy and alive. We stood too close. Close enough to see the fine lines near her eyes, the faint curve of a smile that wasn't a smile. Close enough that if I leaned in another inch, there'd be no going back. Her hand lifted, just a fraction, hovering near my chest, as if to push me away. But it didn't touch. It stayed there, trembling in the air, caught between refusal and surrender. I wanted to close the distance. God, I wanted to. But then she pulled her hand back, quickly, as if even the possibility of touching me was too much. Her voice barely more than a whisper. You need to leave before I do something I can't take back. And yet, her eyes stayed locked on mine. Not moving. Not letting me go. I should have left. I stood there, jacket half slipped off the chair, her words hanging in the air like smoke. Before I do something I can't take back. But I couldn't move. Not when her eyes still held mine. Elena, I said again, softer this time, almost pleading. She shook her head, but her hand gripped the edge of the counter so tightly her knuckles went pale. You don't understand. You don't know what this would cost me. I stepped closer, not touching her, but close enough that she could feel my breath. Then tell me. She laughed, quiet, bitter. Tell you? What would you do with it? You'd listen, nod, promise you're different. And then one day you'd wake up and realize I'm just older. Complicated. Not worth the risk. That's not. Don't. She cut me off, eyes flashing. Don't make it sound simple. Her anger startled me, but underneath it, I heard the tremor. The fear. I should have backed away. Instead, I blurted it out before I could stop myself. I think about you all the damn time. The words cracked the silence in half. She went still, her lips parting like she couldn't decide whether to breathe or speak. I pushed forward, reckless now. I don't care about the rules, or what people think, or how many years separate us. I walk away, and still, I'm here. Outside your door. Every time. And you let me in. Her chest rose sharply. She looked away, but her hand trembled on the counter. Elena, I whispered, tell me I'm wrong. Just once. and I'll leave. The room went painfully still. The clock ticked, cruel and loud. Finally, she turned back, her eyes wet but burning. You are trouble. You're every mistake I swore I'd never make again. My throat tightened. Then why am I still here? Her silence answered everything. I took one step closer. She didn't move. Another. Still no retreat. Her body leaned back against the counter, nowhere left to go, her breath catching as my hand brushed against hers. Just once, deliberate this time. The sound of it, skin on skin, that tiny contact, was louder than the storm outside. Her eyes locked onto mine, raw, searching. Daniel, she whispered. My name. The first time she'd said it tonight. And then, her phone buzzed again. Loud. Shattering. We both froze, inches apart, suspended in something that could ruin us both. Neither of us moved to answer. Neither of us moved away. The buzzing stopped. And in the silence that followed, we both knew. Whatever happened next, there was no way back. The silence after the buzzing was worse than the noise itself. Elena's hand lingered near mine, trembling, but then she pulled back, retreating as if the space between us had suddenly become dangerous again. I can't do this, she whispered, shaking her head. I can't. The phone lit up once more. She finally snatched it, pressing the screen tight against her chest before I could see. I tried to speak, but the words jammed in my throat. Then her expression changed, frozen, drained. When she finally lowered the phone, I caught the name. My mother's. My stomach dropped. She didn't say anything, just set the phone face down on the counter as if it had burned her. You know her? I asked, my voice unsteady. Her silence was an answer. Elena. I pushed my chest tight. How? Her lips parted, then closed again. Her eyes darted toward the floor, away from me. When she finally spoke, it was clipped, sharp. I taught at her book club. Years ago. We kept in touch. Elena's voice faltered, her throat tightening. She doesn't know you're here. I stepped back, like the floor had shifted. You've been talking to my mother? Not about this, she snapped too fast. Then softer, almost breaking. Not about you. But it didn't matter. The truth was already out, hanging in the air between us like a blade. My head spun. All those warnings from my mother, the way she'd said Elena was brilliant, but a little lonely, the way she'd laughed when telling stories about their evenings over wine. You should have told me, I said, my voice low, jagged. Her eyes met mine then, wide and raw. And what would you have done? Walked away. The words hit harder than I expected. Because maybe I wouldn't have. Maybe I would have run toward her faster. But knowing she and my mother shared history, it changed everything. The secrecy, the risk, it wasn't just about age anymore. It was family. Elena, I whispered, she'll hate me if she finds out. She'll hate me, she corrected, her voice cracking. And maybe she should. Her words landed heavy. She pressed both hands against the counter like it was the only thing keeping her upright. I wanted to reach for her, to close the distance again, but something stopped me. A wedge had slid between us, my mother's name, her shadow suddenly everywhere. Yet even through the weight of it, even through the betrayal curling in my chest, my eyes fell back to Elena. Her lips trembling, her shoulders rigid, her gaze begging for something she couldn't ask. And despite everything, I still wanted her. That was the worst part. I didn't know whether to leave or close the gap between us. My chest burned with both impulses. Elena, I said, the name breaking out of me like it didn't belong in my throat. You could have told me. From the start. Her eyes shimmered, but her voice stayed sharp. And you would have walked away. Don't pretend otherwise. I don't know what I would have done, I admitted, heat rising in my chest. But now I can't undo it. I can't stop this. The word hung there, naked, trembling in the air. This. She turned away, bracing herself against the counter, her shoulders pulled tight. If your mother finds out, she'll never forgive me. You'll resent me. And I'll be right back where I started, alone. Something inside me cracked at that word. Alone. I crossed the space before she could stop me, standing just close enough to feel her warmth. You're not alone right now. Her breath hitched. Slowly, she turned her head, her face inches from mine. You're asking me to risk everything. For what? For a rush? For something you'll regret once you see the cost. I swallowed hard. For you. That's the only answer I have. It's the only one I want. Her eyes searched mine, desperate, almost angry, like she wanted to believe me but hated herself for it. You don't know what it means to choose me, she whispered. Then show me, I said, voice rough. Don't push me away just because you're afraid. The words landed heavy. Her lips parted, and for a long, breathless second, she didn't move. Then, her hand rose, slow, trembling, brushing my cheek with a tenderness that almost undid me. It wasn't a kiss. Not yet. But it was worse. More dangerous. Because in that touch, she gave away everything she had been trying to hide. I shouldn't, she whispered. But you want to. I answered, barely able to speak. Her eyes closed, her forehead leaning against mine, both of us shaking under the weight of it. The clock ticked, the rain tapped faintly against the glass, the world outside waiting for a decision we weren't ready to make. Finally, she pulled back just enough to look at me. Her voice was soft, breaking. If we do this, there's no going back. I know, I said. And for the first time tonight, I wasn't afraid. She didn't answer. She just stayed there, her breath against mine, suspended between surrender and retreat, holding on to that last fragile second before everything changed. And I knew, why she didn't move right away. Neither of us did. We just stood there, suspended in the fragile silence, her forehead still close to mine, both of us too scared to close the last inch. Finally, Elena stepped back. Not far, but enough. She turned toward the counter, gripping the edge like it was the only solid thing in the room. Her voice was steady when she spoke, though I could hear the quake beneath it. If your mother finds out, it will break something I can't fix. Between you. Between us. I let the words hang for a beat before answering. Maybe things need to break. Maybe that's the only way something new can happen. She looked at me then, really looked. And in her eyes, I saw the war she was fighting. Fear on one side, desire on the other, with regret carved deep in the middle. Elena, I said softer, I don't care how messy this is. I don't care what it costs. I just know I don't want to spend another night wishing I was here instead of being here. Her breath caught, just once. And then, slowly, as if surrendering to something inevitable, she reached for me. Her hand found mine, not trembling this time. Certain, it wasn't fireworks or music swelling. It was quieter, a truth settling into the space between us. Her fingers tightening around mine like she had decided, finally, to stop fighting herself. We didn't kiss. Not then. But the way she looked at me, it was already more binding than a kiss. Maybe, she whispered, almost to herself, this time I won't run. I squeezed her hand, holding her there, grounding her. Then don't. The clock ticked. The coffee had gone cold. The rain outside faded into silence. But here, in this small kitchen, something had shifted. The fear was still there, sure. The risks hadn't vanished. My mother's name still sat heavy in the room. But the wall Elena had built, stone by stone over years of caution, had cracked. And in that crack, light had slipped in. For the first time, I believed we weren't just circling around something forbidden. We were stepping into it, both feet, eyes open. I didn't know how we'd explain it, or what the fallout would be. But when she leaned against me, her head resting against my chest, I knew one thing. Whatever came next, we'd face it together. And that was enough. Sparkles, did you enjoy the story? Sparkles, what kind of stories would you like to hear next? Whatever happened next, we had already crossed the line.